to the RunnerX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Welcome back to Tough Love Tuesdays. I'm your host, Coach Caroline. And today I want to talk about when your coach pisses you off, okay? I bring this up to the students that we work with a lot because sometimes, I get this way. I work out with Valerie, not every day. We work out about 3 days a week, sometimes less. But I'll be honest, there are days when I'm doing something and I think I'm doing just great. I think I'm making progress. I think I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. And maybe it's a drill that I've done many, many times before, like pulling or something like that. And she'll come up to me and she'll say, bend your knees, or straighten your back, or you're leaning over, or something. She'll cue me to something I'm doing wrong. And there are some days that I just don't feel it. I don't see it. I may be in a bad mood. Maybe I slept wrong. Maybe the caffeine hasn't kicked in yet for me that morning. And I literally want to look at her and say, really like in a nasty tone, I am bending my knees. I want to be a smart aleck and say, can't you see I am bending my knees? Now, what's really interesting is the times I've done that, I usually try to bite my lip because I know that it has nothing to do with what she's saying, right? It has to do with how I'm receiving that comment at that time. Again, tired, hungry, whatever the case may be. And there have been a few times that when she cues me, maybe she's actually been videotaping me, or she was videotaping herself doing a movement and I'm off in the distance. And sometimes I'll just say, hey, I thought I was bending my knees. My knees weren't locked. What were you talking about? And then she'll show me the video, or we'll talk about I wasn't bending my knees enough, right? Maybe I had broken the plane of being in locked knee position, but in order to do what I wanted to do, I wasn't bending enough. And then you start looking at, well, why wasn't I bending enough? Was I bending in such a way where I was feeling it in my quads? Was I engaging my glutes? Which usually is what you want to be doing. Was I bending forward? As I said, I do quite a lot of. And then with those, the big question as a coach, as a mental mindset coach, I want to ask you is, okay, what if you are? What if you are bending forward? What if you aren't bending your knees? And now she just called you out on it. What are you making that mean? And I'm always amazed when I talk to our students about that, is that a lot of times they'll make it mean that they're never going to run great again, or they've let her down somehow, that they're not being a good student. And your coach, regardless of if it's Valerie or somebody else, you're not letting them down. Their job is to get you to your goal, whether that's running pain-free, running a marathon, swimming in a triathlon. Their goal is truly to help you meet your goal. And so a good coach isn't going to emote about whether or not you are mad at them. They know it's a cue. It's the movement. They're telling you what you're supposed to do. If you don't listen, you're not going to be successful. And that's on you. They can't do the push-ups for you. That's something I say all the time, right? So I want you to take a listen to your own brain when you get cued on something, when your coach, if you're working with a coach, or when you're listening to Valerie and she talks about something. Maybe you come to a live clinic, maybe you join us at some time, working with her at some point, and you get cued on something that you thought you were doing right. And then what do you say to yourself when you hear that? Are you talking trash to yourself? Or do you take a moment and say, well, obviously I wasn't doing it as deeply as I thought I was, or I wasn't as correct as I thought it was. And that's okay. Because for me, I'm 55 years old. That's a lot of muscle movement that has been reinforced. And I met Valerie going on a little over 4 years ago. And so we're talking 50 plus years that I was moving this way. And of that 50 plus years, I started seriously running about 40. So she's trying to overtake in my brain, in my muscle pattern, roughly 15 years of running movement. But come on, it's not like I never ran. It's not like I didn't run as a kid. It's not like I didn't do movements like squatting or working out or whatever the case may be. So she's actually having to reinforce decades of incorrect movement in order to get me to move correctly. Great example of something that we talk a lot about is the knee placement. That people want to do a high knee, which is to not to pull the knee, but to take the knee up in front of you. Because if you actually pull using your hamstring, your knee is at about a 45. It doesn't come up to a full 90. But I was in the marching band. I was in the marching band for like 8 years, guys, in high school and college. So we're talking 8 years of reinforced movement over a long period of time of how to march correctly. So that marching of if you've ever seen a marching band, putting the leg up, right? Putting your ankle has to be tight, right? It has to be toes pointed down. Even though it's been 30 years since I've done that, she's having to get that stuff out of my brain and get my body to loosen up and move correctly. So what this is about is really when you get cued, when you get corrected, how do you think about it? How do you react? And then how do you talk yourself through it? If you start finding yourself thinking, I'm going to let her down, she's going to be upset with me, they're going to hate me, you got some mind work to do. You've got a lot riding on this person's opinion that is possibly way more stuff to put on them than they even want or deserve. In most cases, you'll probably find that not that they don't care, but it's like, I'm totally fine with you doing what you're doing. You're still progressing. You're still doing great. I'm just cueing you now on the next movement because you've gotten the first 3 movements down pat. Now I need to correct you on 4, 5, and 6 of the movement. Or you've got the overall pattern down. Now I'm just tweaking you a little bit. Or you were tired, Caroline. So when you were doing that squat with that weight on your back, I could tell you were going to blow your back out. So I had to cue you right then, or else you could have done something to hurt yourself. So is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? It's totally up to you. It is totally up to you to take that thought about what they're cueing, what they're saying to you, and take it as a good thing or a bad thing. And I'm going to challenge you to take it as a good thing. So this week when you go out, or if you're listening to Valerie, or if you're listening to this podcast and you've got some things going on in your head, watch what happens to your voice when somebody corrects you. Are you taking that this means they don't like me? This means I'm going to get fired. This means they don't love me anymore. Or are you basically going to back out and say, nope, they do like me. They do want what's best for me. And that's okay. And I'm going to take their opinion and I'm going to use it. Or maybe I'm not. And that's totally up to you. We will talk to you next week on Tough Love Tuesday, and I hope you're listening to us. And if you get a chance, leave us a 5-star review. We would love to hear from you, and we'd love to have you share this podcast with your friends. We would love to have more people hear about running and the mental side of running, and we hope that you will join us. Thank you for joining us on the RunRx podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.